Hello everyone, welcome back to Hasty Forge, part 2 in our video series of Rasp File knife making. If you liked the first video, please like, comment, share, and or subscribe. Hit the little bell button so that you can be notified of future videos as we create more. Thank you for watching. One of the things I need to address first is that not all files are indeed hard. This particular rasp was soft. I was able to drill through with a high-speed drill bit, no problems. Please check your files. I stated in the first video that they make a great medium for beginner knife makers because they are hard. That's probably the case for 99% of them, but I got unlucky and found a soft one. After the initial bevel grinds that you've seen in the first video, I then take and freehand part of the grinds into the blade. I work on both ends of the belt sander. Try not to be too aggressive in this part. Try to avoid wearing gloves so that you don't get caught in the equipment. Freehanding is not always ideal, but as I'm wanting this knife to look rugged, it's what worked best. In the next few slides, you'll see that I am cleaning up different aspects and areas of the blade. Try not to take everything down to a sharp point, or bevel your grinds to where they meet each other. They'll melt away when you go to quench later. We will be taking the blade up to critical. And here we have most of the completed grinding. Well, I say complete. It will be taken down the rest of the way and sharp and refined after the quench and tempering. Notice the notch that I put at the end of the blade. Some knife makers put this in, some don't. I find it easier to put it in because it gives you a good point to grind from. It also helps aid in sharpening on steels. This particular notch was put in using a chainsaw file. I find that it's just the right size, it's easy to work with, and they're made for working on hardened material. Next, the knife will be going into the forge for the quench. One last look at the knife before it goes into the heat. This is the moment that it'll either make or break. Sometimes in the quench you will crack a blade. From that point you just have to start over. Let's hope this doesn't happen with this one, as we've got about 4 or 5 hours into it already. There are many different right and wrong ways to heat up to critical and quench a blade. Regardless of how many times you look at different forums, hear from experts on the internet, hear from experts of experts on the internet, there just seems to be no good way or right way to do it. Some people think that they have the best way. I find it's easier just to heat it up till it's glowing and then plunge it in. With this particular blade being so wide, I was actually able to balance it up on its spine. This worked out great because I was able to reach in with the tongs and work the material back and forth to evenly heat the entire blade. Once taken past critical to where it is no longer magnetic, it's ready to go into the bucket. We used canola oil to quench this one, approximately 1 gallon. You would think with somebody with so much hair wouldn't enjoy working around fire as much as I do. So far I've still got all my hair. Well, most of it. I think I'm missing some of my arms. Unfortunately, this is the largest bucket that I had, and only had approximately 1 gallon of canola oil to quench with. Ideally, you need a bigger container and more oil, and the oil needs to be heated to approximately 130 degrees. To keep from cracking or warping your blade. This is extremely hard. It did skate a file, but I'm not entirely sure or convinced of how hard it may actually be. Keep working the material back and forth. Don't mind the flames. They're not going to catch anything on fire unless you're just completely negligent. They will die down. The fire is natural. As the flames die down, you can then decide if you want to flip the blade around and then dip the handle. It's not necessary, but at this point you want to let it set and rest on an anvil or on a workbench away from anything flammable until it cools down to room temperature. Lots of people use different things for quenching. Canola oil for me works for this application. I've heard of people using motor oil. That's not necessarily a good idea, as it emits a noxious fume that can be poisonous. Some people will use gear oil, which kind of has the same effect. Regardless of what you use, exercise caution. It may pop, it may spatter, it will catch on fire. Using warm water is also a good viable substitute for quenching, in place of oil. Be cautious though, as this can crack and warp a blade much easier than oil. Once the blade is cool enough to handle, use another file and skate, pushing away from the blade. If the file skates across the blade, you've achieved a decent hardness. Notice the mill scale buildup that is now on the blade. This will have to be cleaned before tempering. Using a low-speed drill with a wire wheel, gently remove some of the excess mill scale that was built up during the quenching process. From here, we'll go back to the belt sander to remove any of the excess that we couldn't get with the wire wheel, and to refine some of the edges. From there, it's on to tempering. Typically, I don't wear gloves while working around equipment such as this, anything that moves. However, in this instance, I'm wearing gloves because I did not want to transfer any oils or impurities that I may have on my hands back to the blade before tempering. After each pass on the belt sander, I plunge it into the water that you see next to it. This is to keep it cool so that we don't damage our hardness. And here is our shaped and refined blade, ready to go in for tempering. We will temper inside the house. Hopefully your wife or significant other is nice enough to let you use the oven. I'll be using a small bread pan filled with sand. I'll explain that in the next few slides. Using sand, just like this that we got out of the garden from out behind the house, helps to aid in the tempering process by avoiding tempering the edge. You want to keep the edge hard. This will allow the rest of the blade and the spine to relax a little bit, have a little bit of flexibility before breaking, but it won't take away from the hardness of your edge. And here's the blade in its resting place inside the oven, where it will take a bath at approximately 400 degrees for the next 2.5 hours. At that time, you want to turn the oven off and let it slowly go back to room temperature on its own. Once it's there, you can pull it out, check the bluing, and you may want to retemper for another hour. Thank you for watching part 2 in our video series of rasp file knife making. Part 3 we will be addressing the handle and finishing up the knife, so please stay tuned. If you enjoyed this, please leave us a like, comment, subscribe. Hit the little bell notification so that you can be notified when we upload new videos in the future. And again, thank you for watching and supporting our channel. Hope to see you soon.